Hey everybody, this is Brent and welcome to Brent's Crossroads. And where did my latest travels take me? Took me out to Hollywood, California to go check out Universal Studios Hollywood. And while I was there, the main reason I went, it was Halloween Horror Nights. And I had been to Orlando for the first time last year, so I was really wanting to see what Hollywood had to offer because it's a little bit different animal. There were, some overlap houses. There's usually about 10 houses and 4 scare zones in Orlando. This year in Hollywood, there were 8 houses. You have the Terror Tram, which is an exclusive thing to Hollywood, and a couple of scare zones. The scare zones weren't as great in Hollywood. There was only one, the Noches de Bruja, that was more of a fully realized fright, scare zone that you're used to if you've been to Orlando. Everything else is kind of like a couple characters walking around, couple displays. The carnival one had a huge stage that had dancing clowns and fire shooting up, but it's kind of like the main stage that they have in Orlando. But anyway, so there were 8 houses and the Terror Tram. This time I'm only going to rank the houses. Although the Terror Tram this year, the theme was Blumhouse for the 15th anniversary of what is currently the current House of Horror. A24 is not quite there yet. Blumhouse is the top right now. And especially after joining forces with James Wan. And so now there were the overlap houses that were at both locations. There was Five Nights at Freddy's, Fallout, the Jason universe, the WWE Wyatt 6, and the Terrifier, which Terrifier being a house was the worst kept secret whenever they started announcing the houses. The only other IP house that was in Hollywood was Poltergeist, and that one was not replicated in Orlando. Then the other 2 houses rounding out Hollywood were 2 original concept ones. Scarecrow, which also featured music by Guns N' Roses guitarist Slash. And there was also a continuation of the monstrous Latin America ghost theme one with Monstrous 3. So, where did I rank the houses this year compared to last year? Let's find out. Number 8, Five Nights at Freddy's. Yeah. This one actually wasn't my last place house for most of the night. There was another one that was the last place house. Most of the scares in the Five Nights at Freddy's house were the animatronic figures. And so you could see them a mile away because there were huge places in the wall. There were huge places where you knew what was coming. And there was a couple places where a scare actor would jump out, but they were few and far between the time I went through. And once we had the frequent fear, not the frequent fear. We had the fast pass to where we can get to each one through the fast lane one time each. And the Five Nights at Freddy's, even that line was 45 minutes. A lot of times the line to get into this house was about 2 to 3 hours. And if I would have waited 2 to 3 hours to get into this house, I would have been highly, highly upset. And, everything was kind of a prop scare. And it kind of was some of the issues I had with last year with The Quiet Place is that a lot of the scares were just a prop and when, an occasional human. And they were, there's nothing really scary about a person just coming out and screaming to trigger either trigger the animatronic in this one or triggering the Quiet Place aliens in the Quiet Place one last year. So yeah, this one, it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't last for most of the night, but it ended up in last place. And if I would have had to have waited hours to get in with not being a fan of the game or the movie or anything, I would have been sorely, sorely disappointed. I'm disappointed I waited the 45 minutes to do this in the first place. So number 7, Fallout. This house was my last place pick for most of the night. But then I went on it a second time. That's one thing. If you get to some of the houses early, and if you have the pass to get to get through faster, you only use once. As many houses as you can get through early without using the pass, that means you have that later to use. So you're able to go through some of the houses a second time, which really worked well because that's how I was able to go through Terrifier a couple times, Poltergeist a couple times, Monstrous a couple times, Fallout a couple of times. Maximize the money you spend. You'll see people when there's like a 5-minute wait, blow their pass. Wait the 5 minutes. Then if you want to go through it again, then blow the pass later on whenever there's a lot longer line. Because Terrifier was like this. We ran back to Terrifier first whenever they opened, got through it, still had my pass to use it later on at night. So the Fallout house was originally my last pick for most of the night, like I said, until I went the second time. And the second time was better. I don't know. I still didn't think Fallout was a very good property for a haunted house. The scare actors were fantastic. A lot of it was just another uninspired house. I really didn't think Five Nights at Freddy's was inspired. Fallout wasn't really inspired. The set design and everything was fantastic. And I think most of the houses that I went through in Hollywood, the makeup, the set designs, the props and everything were better than Orlando. But I think a lot of that's because you're in Hollywood. And so the people that are probably doing the props and all these things for the houses are probably professionals, like serious, like movie grade professionals. So yeah, the scare actors did the best that they could with what they had. And the scare actors made it a better experience the second time. And that's why it got bumped up to 7 and not last place. And this is the effect that, a different scare acting team can have. So if there's a house you don't like the first time, give it a second chance if you have the opportunity, because, it could be a totally different experience based on the scare actor team, which it's not a knock on any of the scare actor teams. They all do phenomenal jobs. What they do is fantastic. But, the second time I went through, they were in better positions, filling gaps from the first trip. Was it a better experience? Hell yes. Was it a better house? Hell no. So number 6, and this one really disappointed me because I was really kind of looking forward to this house. It was the Jason Universe house. And because I love the Friday the 13th franchise, Jason was one of the core slashers that I grew up with in the 80s. So I was really stoked about this house. Did I want to get scared to death by a machete wielding Jason in a haunted house? Shit, yeah. Where do I sign up? Unfortunately, the concept of Jason as a haunted house didn't translate well. The house was, set up with a bunch of nets from Camp Crystal Lake. So it copied a lot of the deaths and death scenes from the different movies that happened at Camp Crystal Lake. They didn't add anything new to it. And the only scares were really just Jason. So, Jason's not a fast dude. So a slow lumbering Jason just kind of out of the, it really didn't do anything. The set pieces were well done. Some of the death scenes were well done. And, I'll have a card up in the corner at different points to go to my compilation video of my walkthrough of all the houses at Halloween Horror Nights. It's where you can go check it out yourself. In the end, they didn't do anything new with the hockey mask killer. And, the house would have been better served if they would have added some original stuff to it instead of copying deaths, just straight up copying deaths from the film series. So much potential, so much disappointment. And I wish I could have gone to see it in Orlando, because everything I've seen and heard is that the Orlando version of the Jason Universe house was far superior. And yeah, maybe next year I can hit both coasts and go. So number 5, this one I didn't know what to expect going in because it's been years since I'd watched the WWE, WWF, and that was the Wyatt Six house. I knew about, just because I have friends that follow wrestling, and so I'll see things pop up. But I knew about the death of Bray Wyatt and all this stuff. And it's not, like I said, it's not a house I was like, oh my God, I got to go to this house, because I hadn't watched it. I knew nothing of the story. And, but did I like the house? Honestly, I did. The setting was, kind of like a bayou cabin, in back, set in the, and then you had the family stuff. And problem was, though, because of where they're placed, the houses are placed, the Wyatt Six house was directly next to the Jason Universe house. So if you're doing these back to back, you have, cabins at Crystal Lake, and then you have this cabin in the bayou. It's really too matchy. I might have liked it better if it was if there was some separation between the two houses, to where it wasn't like going through the same house twice. Because even this, it was a small handful of masked individuals instead of one masked individual. The jump scares were good. The setting was good. It was a superior house compared to Jason Universe, but it was a decent house. It was a good experience. And it actually made me want to look up more about the Wyatt Six, to see more about them, to see what that's all about. So now let's go to house number 4. Well, that is the poltergeist house. And as a kid, this movie scared the shit out of me. And most of us that grew up in the 80s, we have some trauma involved with clowns because of this movie. Yeah, our warm, fuzzy childhood trauma, Gen X. Yeah, this house was pretty much a direct adaptation of the film. But, unlike the Jason Universe, which was a constant barrage of Jasons and Jason after Jason after Jason, this told the movie story, and you went on your way to contemplate if they only remove the headstones but not the bodies whenever you go anywhere. And I was disappointed it's still 4, but there were some areas where I was disappointed. When you first go into the first time you're going to one of the bedrooms, the kids' bedroom, the clown that sits in the chair that scared the crap out of us as a kid just sits there. Like I was expecting like an animatronic, I was expecting some kind of movement, some kind of, jump to do something, but no, it's just static and just sat there. That was childhood trauma, and I didn't get to reignite my childhood trauma, which was disappointing. Now, the second time, I don't know I didn't notice this in the second bedroom area whenever the trees crashing through the window, but the clown is on a thing that slides out from underneath the bed. And I don't know if I just missed that the first time because I was looking at the tree, or if it wasn't working the first time through, but still, it's just the clown rolling out. It wasn't a jump scare. It wasn't something that would like scare the crap out of us and make us think about our childhood trauma again. They did use the clown in an area that wasn't in the movie. Whenever they go into the closet, into the other world, they had the clown in there in like the ectoplasm area. The second time we went through, the clown wasn't there. So it's kind of like, all right. So I gained the clown moving out from under the bed, but I lost the creepy scare actor that really did a good job the first time I went through the house. The only other thing I was expecting is the very first room you go in is like the living room of the house, and Carol Ann's in front of the TV, and there's the static on the TV, and she just keeps repeating they're here, and that's it. It doesn't do anything. There's like nothing else in that room that does anything. She doesn't move. There's no kind of scares or anything. So, but it was still a good enough experience to get up to 4. Number 3. And we reached number 3 before hitting the first of the original houses. And this was Scarecrow. And it was a nice callback to a previous house that they had. And this, like I said, this one featured music from guitar icon Slash. The house was a pleasant, gory stroll through farms where scarecrows had apparently had enough and started to kill the farmers and all the people around in creative ways, was, stabbing them with corn cobs. And, there was some really good makeup and prop effects with this. And it was a fun thing. It's like, going through areas and like scarecrows, when they jump out, scare the crap out of you. And the music was tough to hear throughout the house because of the screaming, but in the places where you could hear the soundtrack, it was amazing. And the thing that disappointed me was the record that they sold out there for this year's HHN featuring the Slash music didn't have the music for Scarecrow. Even though there's a Scarecrow on the cover of the LP, it didn't have any of the music from the house. It had music he'd written in previous years for some of the Universal Monsters houses, which is fine. It's a fantastic record. If you had a chance to pick it up, it's fantastic. I was just hoping it would have been the music for the Scarecrow house. But, mostly the queue was the only place you could hear it. Really good house. Loved it. Said it was good enough to where when you get to number 3, that's where we get the first original house. Number 2. 2 and 1 waffled back and forth, and it took the second trips through the houses before I finally settled on what was going to be number 1 and number 2. So number 2, Terrifier. Art the Clown, being the subject of the house, like I said earlier, was one of the worst kept secrets whenever house announcements started coming. And before the first house announcement, this was the big speculation, was that Terrifier and Art were going to be one of the houses. And this house did what I was hoping the Jason Universe house would have done. Yes, there were set pieces and things that were, directly based off of the 3 Terrifier films, but there was also some original scenes and original pieces. There were things that weren't in the movies that they put into the house, which gave it a fresher feel than what the Jason was. And so, yeah, even though you had multiple Art the Clowns, in different costumes and iterations, Art the Clown is a lot scarier jump scare because he's not a slow, lumbering, dead corpse, that comes up from the lake or, gets electrocuted in his grave to come back to life every so often. Art will scare the shit out of you. So, because this having the mixed original and mixed film scenes, it was well worth the wait and the money. It's why we chose to do this one first. And I'm glad I still had my pass to be able to go later on again. The only thing, it's like there was like misting water, especially toward the end. And they had these material pieces hanging down. They were pretty dry the first time through. So with the lighting effect being red, gives it kind of a blood look to the curtains. And it was just, oh my God, it was so gross feeling whenever you're like going through like this at the end when we went through the second part later on in the night. And you had no choice. In Hollywood, you got a little bit of wetness on you. Orlando, they gave you the opportunity to take at one part it forked off to a dry or a wet path. Yeah, Hollywood, no such choice. So it's kind of obvious what number 1 was, and that was the Monstrous 3 Ghosts of Latin America. Last year in Orlando, I got to experience the Monstrous 2, which it was one of my top houses for last year. So I was really excited about this one. And I didn't think that an original house would win my number 1. And it almost didn't. Like I said, it went back and forth with Terrifier. And because what I would do is I had the list on my phone. And as I went through the houses, I would update the rankings to, as I thought about them. And this house did not disappoint, and I was eagerly anticipating it. And the house is divided into 3 different Latin American ghost legends and stories. The set pieces were fantastic, just like with 2. The costumes were bloody good. There were some effects that they had the second time that they didn't have the first. Like there was a huge head like coming out and swallowing a body on a bed. And the first time we went through, either the person was so still that I thought it was just a figure, but the second time it was a scare actor that was, halfway in the mouth, was thrashing around and screaming. Fantastic. The scares, plentiful and good. The scare actors in this one deserve like MVP awards because this is where they hustled the most, and this was their best. The second time through, this was the best, one of the best scare acting crews I've ever seen. And went through this house twice. It was fantastic both times. Scared the shit out of me. And after going through the second time, though, Monstrous came away with the scare victory. It was just that much better than Terrifier. So hopefully next year I'll get to do both coasts. We'll have to see. So I enjoyed my chance to visit out to Universal Studios Hollywood to check out their version of Halloween Horror Nights. And I'm going to have a video up for the Terror Tram and that is also on the video that has everything on it. So I'd love to hear, and I'd love to see both versions and compare them. So I hope you all had a spooky Halloween. And if you experienced Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood this year, what were your favorite houses? Drop them in the comments. So thanks for coming out to Crossroads. And if you like this kind of content, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you out at the Crossroads. Bye.